Hello and welcome to the Terran Imperial Monarchy's Weapon System Training Course. This course is brought to you by the Colonial Naval Academy located on Cav. I'm Captain Jim JERICO of the CN and will be your instructor for today. Our lesson today will be on the particle beam weapons. Particle beam weapons, also known as particle accelerator guns, ion cannons, proton beams, lightning rays, ray guns, and well, I think you get the point, are a direct energy device that utilizes a narrow beam of atomic or subatomic particles. We will be exploring a small variety of particle beam weapons from the common to uncommon types. We will, of course, learn about its functionality, history, followed by its implementations in our current era. So with that, let us begin. The particle beam is a device that utilizes electromagnetic fields to accelerate and direct charged particles along a predetermined path, and on electrostatic lenses is used to focus these streams of particles towards its target. Basically, it's a device that flings electrons in a particular direction in order to disrupt the molecular structures of said target. The beam itself is normally a neutral particle beam, which ionizes atoms by either stripping an electron off of each atom or allowing each atom to capture an extra electron, from which they can speed along a linear axis via an electromagnetic field and discharge in a specific direction, which is usually in the opposite direction of the being holding the weapon, normally. Due to the nature of this kind of device, the beam is not normally visible, as the weapon is using atoms as its means of destruction. So, to see, one would need to add light, such as a laser pointer, to indicate to one shooting that they've hit their target. The big difference between this and the laser is that the laser is, in principle, a weapon that uses radio frequencies in the light spectrum, and the particle beam is based on the atomic and subatomic, basically. In 1924, Gustav Ising, a Swedish accelerator physicist and geophysicist, proposed the creation of the linear particle accelerator, an invention that would later be constructed in 1928 by Norwegian accelerator physicist Rolf Widrow at the RWTH Aachen University. In 1929 to 1930, Ernest O. Lawrence invented the cyclotron at the University of California, Berkeley, which was later patented in 1932, just a handful of years before the Second Great War begins. In the midst of the Second Great War in 1944, Vladimir Vaskler, a Soviet experimental physicist, invented the synchrotron. And by coincidence, Edwin McMillan, an American physicist, constructed the first electron cyclotron in 1945, all without knowing of Vaskler's work, as it was published in a Soviet journal. In 1952, 2 years after the birth of the Imperial Monarchy, Sir Marcus Oliphant, of Australian physicist, designed and built the first proton synchrotron. Now, there's no further information on the particle beam in that of Terran development, as much of that historical data has been lost and or destroyed during the invasion of 1969. However, during and after the War of Terra, the Imperial Monarchy collected all the particle beams they could salvage from the corpses of the dead aliens or from their wreckage drifting near and or around Earth, and began reverse engineering the devices. By 1971, during the Reconstruction era, a Japanese weapons company, Nambu, created the first Terran-made particle beam rifle. Shortly after the war for Terra concluded and the hunt was on for those taken by the pirate scum, the Imperial Monarchy set out to build up its defensive capabilities in every way imaginable, and this meant manufacturing particle beam weapons. And it was a good thing that Terrans began to develop this very widely used in the rest of the galaxy tech as the spirits of the departed, also known as the unalive, began to become far more real than one would think or imagine. The ghost stories of old meant to scare the young at a sleepover or at a camping trip started to become a living nightmare for, well, the living, as spirits began to manifest in some areas of the world and would attack any living being they could, absorbing their life energies from the victim. Now, I must note that not all spirits are malevolent. Many ancestors of Terra have been noted to remain to help protect their kin from these evil spirits, but there are a lot of these dark beings, and when it comes to dispatching them yourself, you'll want a particle beam weapon of some sort. But the weapons is not only good for ghosts, but it's also good for making the living into ghosts as well, so don't forget to double tap. Now, as mentioned, the particle beam is the most widely used direct energy weapon in the galaxy, which is due to its ease to produce en masse, can neutralize the unliving, and was capable of taking out one's foes at a reasonable range depending on the capacitance output. That being said, it has its drawbacks. Compared to the Terran-made laser rifles, the particle beam requires more energy to use, and the charge time per shot tends to be just slightly slower than its counterpart. In other words, fewer and slower shots. Nevertheless, there are mods one can pick up to improve upon this device, countering its drawbacks, but off the shelf, it's just not as good as the Terran-made laser. It would be after the invasion of Terra was more or less concluded in 1971, during what would have been called the Reconstruction Era or the time for rebuilding. A Japanese company, Nambu, rolled up its sleeves and produced some of the first and finest Terran-made particle beam weapons. The first they introduced was the Nambu Diabuku Riku, or however you say that. It's a rifle type, and the Nambu Munshane, a pistol type. Again, I'm sorry if I slaughtered those names, but I'll tell you what they mean in a moment. The designs were literally taken off the corpses of slain aliens, which, in retrospect, could have been Tazarian-made in any case, and then improved upon using Terran ingenuity, with the introduction of superior Terran heat sinks being employed in all other weapon platforms. It too would find its way into this new tech as well. That and the improvements to the capacitor, lenses, power packs, the Nambu-made weapon rose above their alien counterparts. The Nambu Munshane, that's how you say it, or Moonlight gun, was fitted with improved power packs to offset the power consumption of the device, allowing for a few more shots than the standard Tazarian type, and an easy-to-calibrate alignment system which could be employed in the field to ensure a straight and true shot. The capacitors were also improved, but some variants such as the Munshane 2 and Munshane 3 went without this improvement due to the extra bulkiness made by the capacitors, some just lacking the smaller fit overall. The pistol would be made a favorite for those who traverse the cramped unknowns of tomb ships or bunker complexes. The Nambu Diapu Riku, or Daybreak Gun, prefer the English, my god, I cannot speak what they say, was pretty much the bigger brother of the Munshane, as it could hold more capacitors and a larger power pack, giving it more oomph, technically speaking. Of course, not to be outdone, in about the early 2000s, an American company called the Boring Company made a far more powerful but cumbersome particle beam weapon dubbed the Ghostbuster. It was a rifle type configuration, but instead of a standard power pack that would be inserted into the weapon itself, it had a cable connecting to a backpack that was in essence a large power pack. The backpack was a series of standard power packs that could be swapped out for fresh packs found in the field, and it also housed all the capacitors, removing the weight from the rifle itself. As fun as it may be to unleash a torrent of beams at the living and unliving alike, it ain't cheap. So you'll likely find the more conventional versions of particle beam weapons to be more widely employed out in the field. So, long and short, there you have it, the particle beam weapons. A weapon that is widely used and abused by many around the galaxy for its ease to make and employ against the living and the dead. For when you need to clear out the dead man's zone or a tomb ship floating above, or make a ship into such, you'll want to use a devastating device. Just, again, don't forget to double tap. Could save your life. For further information on energy beam weapons or particle beam weapons, you can find that at Terra_Wikipedia on the GNet. That's all we have for you today. Thank you for your time, and you are dismissed.